Hey, this week we're going back to the USSR. I'm back in the USSR. That's right. This lens, the Jupiter-8, was produced by the Soviet Union way back in the 1950s through the 60s, roughly into the mid 70s or so. You know, where they actually changed from silver to a black and so forth and so on. But what we're going to be looking at is the Jupiter-8 that I have. It's a 50mm f2. It's an L39 mount. But anyway, let's get into figuring out what this thing's all about.
Things that make you say.
You also may have noticed a little facial hair going on here. You know, I introduced this to you in our last video, but since we're talking about Soviet stuff, this is kind of like a Vladimir beard. No, not that Vladimir. Put the poo in Putin. No. This is the first Vladimir, the original Vladimir Ilyich Lenin. Let's go check it out.
Here I am, Vietnam. Rain is always coming down.
This is Camera Talk with Dr. Scott. Okay, just like the intro said, this week we're going back to the USSR. Back in the day, before Russia, no, it wasn't before Russia was Russia, because Russia was Russia, and then it was the USSR, the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, and then it was Russia again. So before, after, before, now we're back to the after, before, Russia.
The Soviet Union? I thought you guys broke up.
Yes, that's what we wanted you to think.
But this particular lens, this is the Jupiter-8. As you can see, it doesn't even say Jupiter. It's got the acrylic alphabet on here, the Russian alphabet that they use, or the writing format that they use. But it has the letter 8, so you know it's a Jupiter-8, and you know it's a Jupiter-8 because it's also a 50 f2. We have a Jupiter-3, the big brother. It's an f1.5. But as much as usually us photographers, we seek out the larger the aperture, the better. Actually, this one kind of kicks its butt, really. So 1.5 would be nice to have, but it's really not. The f2, this is kind of the cream of the crop in the Jupiter world. So that's what we're going to be talking about this week. My particular sample here, as you can tell by the serial number, that's one of the things about Soviet lenses, is you can always tell the date of manufacturer because they're always the first 2 digits of the serial number, and this one's 61. So this is actually born a few years before I am.
We're so old!
So, but we're both 60 childs. Yay!
In the summer of
All the love and good stuff. The love generation. So Jupiter-8, it's you know, it was originally, well, it's a copy. I was gonna say originally. It's actually a copy of a Zeiss sonar, 50 f2. Now the Zeiss sonar was originally designed by Dr. Berthollet for Zeiss Icon back in 1929, and you know, the sonar has gone on to fame and glory ever since then. And you know, as in previous videos, I've talked about Soviet lenses before. You know, at the end of World War II, the Soviets wanted, you know, war reparations for the damn Nazis and all the money that they caused the world to spend on trying to fight them. They wanted their money back. So when they took East Germany, Carl Zeiss Jena was on their side of the border. So They raided the factory, took all the designs and machinery and everything else back to the motherland, and started producing copies of things. So this is a copy of a Zeiss lens. Now, of course, it's not Zeiss quality, but they did their best, I guess, at the time to come up with something as good as they're going to get. And you know, we went through this with the Helios lenses as well, being Zeiss Biotar copies. Well, this is a Sonar copy, and Sonar is you know, derived from the German word Sonne, which is, or Sonne, which is for sun, for light, because the f2 at the time was considered pretty fast, so that's where the name was derived from. But anyway, it's not the best lens in the world, of course. It's not the worst lens in the world, but it's one of those character lenses, they call it. It's a vintage lens, and you can see how nice and shiny it is. You know, this one I purchased from somebody back in Russia. Actually, he has a YouTube channel and a eBay store. Roto House, I think it's called. But anyway, you know, he does good work with his lenses. He CLA'd this one, polished it all up and everything, so it's all pretty, which is nice because you can get these in pretty rough condition too. But they're very economical. That's the beauty of these things. So even if you buy one and it doesn't turn out to be the greatest thing ever, you can probably sell it for the same cheap price that you bought it for, get your money back. But if you're lucky, you'll get one that's you know, decent enough to use for, again, character purposes. It's a little creativity here and there, especially when it comes to portraiture and things like that. You know, I'm going to show you a few samples of my son Dylan. Aww. Running around at you know, f2, 2.84, and 5.6. I'd like to do the whole range, but you know, at 14 months, he's a little firecracker and he's all over the place, so he's pretty tough to nail down, especially when you manual focus lens. So I did my best to try and get some decent shots for you, but I'll include some other images that I found out there just to kind of show you its potential. But anyway, it's again, it's a nice little lens for what you get. I mean, wide open, it can be sharp in the center, and again, depending on the situation. It's always soft in the corners. That's the reputation that they have. But again, it can get that 3D pop. That the Sonars are famous for, under the right conditions again. You know, and as you stop down, of course, it gets better, just like most of these vintage lenses. They're not the greatest wide open. But they, you know, they do get better as you stop down. I think f8 is where this little baby here tops off at. But again, you know, for portraiture, you know, having soft, you know, edges is not a bad thing as long as you're sharp in the center. Now, if you're shooting on a Micro Four Thirds, like a Panasonic or a Olympus, you're probably going to get some pretty good sharp images, because of course a 50mm at that point becomes 100mm, so you're, you know, 2 times the crop. You're actually cropping in on the center anyway, which is where the best part of the lens is. So it's actually could be sweet in that regards, versus shooting on like a full frame. You know, you're going to see the entire the resolution across the entire screen, so, or across the image, so you're going to see those soft corners. But it's got, you know, some decent bokeh. Again, close up. Now close up is relative speaking too, because this has a close focus of 1 meter, which is 3.3 feet. So it's not that close, but you know, if you are within that range, you should get some nice bokeh if the background is far enough away from the subject. It's specs, you know, like most sonars are 6 elements in 3 groups. Its close focus, as I just said, is a meter or 3.3 feet. You know, the weight of this thing is very light because it's aluminum. Now, of course, I have it screwed onto a L39 to NEX adapter because it's a L39 thread, and you know, 130 grams. This thing is very light. You hardly even notice it, you know, in your hands. What else I can say? Aperture blades, nine aperture blades. As I said that already, but I don't think so. That's what happens when you get old, you forget everything. But one of the things I guess people do complain about is that the aperture ring is not clicked. So it just, you turn it and it moves, and you have no idea if it's moved, especially if you accidentally hit it. So you kind of have to take some time to look at it before you take your shot, just to make sure that you've got the right aperture that you're after. Because when you're focusing, you know, your fingers could inadvertently end up, you know, drifting a little farther to the north and touching the ring, which is easy enough to move. Construction of these things is okay for a Soviet lens. Compared to other, like a Zeiss lens, the construction would suck. You know, you're like, oh my God, look at, I mean, listen to that. That's fairly loose for the aperture ring, right? The focusing ring is not loose. It's actually nice and smooth. And I don't know if that's just because it was CLA'd and redone that way, or, but it comes across nice. And the Soviets had a reputation. Not having the greatest QC quality control in the world, and you know, just looking, really is not oil. You might get a trace of some oil on there, but nothing to write home about, so to speak. So no big deal again, and whether that was cleaned up or not, who knows. But this particular one is made by KMZ, which was originally a military optics maker for, you know, the Soviets' Red Army out there. But after the war, they brought the Zeiss, you know, designs and machines and whatnot to the KMZ factory, because it's just outside of Moscow. It's actually a suburb of Moscow. It's Krasnogorsk. The name of the city or town or suburb. Of course, my Russian accent is probably not that good. You have to lower your voice like this in Krasnogorsk. Probably sounds better. Spasiba. But anyway, that's who made it, KMZ. Now it was you know, farmed out to other factories around the area whenever they got, you know, KMZ got too busy producing everything else. But this one you could tell by the little symbol. It's one thing about Soviet lenses, wherever they're made, they always have a little symbol for each factory, and this one's a KMZ symbol. You know, what else could I tell you about this? It's you know, again, the downsides of it is it tends to be prone to flaring. So if you have a hood, now it's a 40.5 millimeter thread needed on here. So if you can get a hood on it, you know, especially the deeper the better, then you probably won't worry so much about it, which will take away the flatness of the image and add more contrast and whatnot. And of course, you won't have to worry about flares. But of course, with today's you know, editing software, you know, could always add contrast and whatnot in post work after that anyway. So again, it's you know, bang for the buck, so to speak. It's like $30 or so, you know, for a lens that's, pretty good. So, you know, as I said, it's a character lens. You know, everybody talks about vintage lenses being character lenses. Being an L39, you know, L for Leica thread, right? You may think that it's good for rangefinders, but this particular one was actually designed for the Zorki and Kiev rangefinders, which have a different depth of their mechanisms inside than Leica does. So they're not exactly best suited for a Leica, but with today's Leicas, with the magnification and focus peaking and things like this on there, it doesn't matter. You don't really need the rangefinder feature to work for you anyway in that regard. So you can still use it on your modern Leicas without much issue. Using the scale on it for you know, hyperfocal distance and whatnot or zone focusing is probably ideal for this kind of thing, because you could pretty much narrow, you know, you don't zoom with a prime, focus in on what exact depth you want to hit this at, so that you just pretty much point and shoot when you realize you're within that distance. So let me get you a shot of my usual end of my Canon M50, which I shoot this with my Sony A7R II. Actually, I've got a nice lens on here right now. This is the Canon FD mount, 55mm 1.2. That's a pretty sweet lens. But anyway, since we're talking about the Jupiter, so make sure I'm wide open as always, and let me. Again, what I usually do is get you a shot of the nameplate on the end of my M50 kit lens that I use to shoot these videos. So it's a 15-45. So let's see how sharp I can get it. Now this is wide open. Wide open at f2. So as I said, the center of the image should be its sharpest. So again, let's see if I can get in as tight as I can, as sharp as I can, which should be right about there. 1, 2, 3. But I don't have a memory card. The old faux pas of the memory card thing. So let me get that in there. Let me try that again. If at first you don't succeed, try again. Alright, so sharp. Alright, 1, 2, 3. Alright, I've also got it on continuous shooting, so I got a couple shots there. But anyway, just let me change it to kind of where its sweet point is, which is let me get it to, let's see, how about f8. Yeah, we haven't done an f8 shot, so now of course I need to open up my shutter so I can get some better light in here. Alright, so let me again zoom in. No, zoom in. You can't zoom with a prime. Remember, I said that already. I keep saying that in my videos. Let's see how sharp. There we go. Alright, so 1, 2, 3. Alright, so we have 2 or 3 pictures of f2 and 2 or 3 pictures of f8. But anyway, let me get that shutter speed back up, because usually I'm taking shots of Dylan and he's running around, so I need that higher speed. So anyway, so that was those were the shots of the end of my camera. Let me include some shots now of Dylan at f2, at 2.8, at f4, and 5.6. All right, so that was Dylan. So that kind of wraps up all I really wanted to say about the Jupiter-8. Again, it's bang for the buck. It's a nice little lens, good for character, great for portraiture. It's good with micro four thirds or APS-C if you got one of those systems. Again, it's better focused in on the center area anyway. And again, straight out of the camera, it's okay. But hey, with the software these days, you can play around with that and produce some pretty cool, creative little images there. So speaking of that, what do I use for my software? Is Luminar. If you never heard of it, you should check it out. Luminar, Luminar. I think I already have it up there. But, it's great. It's economical. It's $89, straight up. But they have discounts all the time. If you get different sales and things like that. If you click below, you save $10, right? Who doesn't want to save $10? So, yeah, use my link. You save $10. It makes me a couple of bucks here and there. Every little bit helps. I get something free from them once in a while. It's always nice to get something back. But, it's just like Lightroom, Photoshop, Capture One, all the, there's a bunch of them out there that are pretty killer these days. But it's yours for life too. You buy it, it's yours. You load it on your system and your PC. You never have to pay monthly membership charges or fees for upgrades and all that. Every upgrade is free, unless it's a major upgrade where it's a completely different package. Then you have to pay some more. But because you already bought the first one, you get it at a reduced price, a discounted price. Because once you're a customer for life too. So hey, all the power to you, right? So that's my little plug for Luminar. Again, this was Jupiter-8, 50mm f2. Goes from f2 to f22. I don't know if I mentioned that or not, but it's it's got a nice little range. Again, it's a small little package. It's lightweight, cheap. So it's ideal. How can you go wrong with something like that unless you get a terrible sample? But at that much money, or that little money, you could buy a bunch of them and still not pay the same as you would for one of these, or definitely not one of those. You could probably buy 1,000 of them for one of these things. But anyway, it's a great little lens. So you got doctor's recommendation. Get a Jupiter-8. You won't regret it unless you get a bad sample. But don't blame me if you get a bad sample. That's your own fault for not shopping well. But hey, why not support my channel, huh? Subscribe. That's right. Give me a subscribe. And one more time for good measure, subscribe. And because we love the thumbs up girls. And why not give me a thumbs up too while you're at it? And lastly, in this time of COVID, hope you got your vaccine. Where I work for a university here in Vietnam, and we've been told we have a few more weeks to wait, but we're supposed to get vaccine all set up for us and everything, so we should be good to go with that. Vietnam's going through its own little outbreak. It's not quite an outbreak like it is in most of the world, but we're a few hundred a day, approaching 1,000 a day. That's when it starts to bother me, when the numbers get big like that. But hey, I stay home, so I don't really worry too much about it. Just go downstairs, go to the grocery store, and right back up again, so I'm not wandering through public, getting breathed on by infected others. So practice that social distancing, wear your mask, wash your hands. Even if you got the vaccine and stuff, you should probably wear a mask while you're out there anyway. Because like this new Delta version's kind of kick ass and doesn't really care if you have a vaccine or not. It still wants to attack and do its thing. So be a COVID fighter. All right, and we'll see you next week, right? Come on back for more. Remember, you belong here. And this was Camera Talk with Dr. Scott, brought to you by Modesty Photography, where we're here to save you money, teach you a thing or two about something you may not have known about with photography or vintage lenses. You know, we do this for fun. These aren't technical camera reviews or anything like that. It's just me sharing what I know and, you know, what you may not know. So anyway, thanks for dropping by, and we'll see you in the next video. All right, bye-bye.
Here I am, Vietnam. Rain is always coming.